Good evening, everybody. I'm Kelly Dyer Fry. I'm the editor at the Oklahoman. We couldn't be happier with this turnout. I told Jacqueline, because she's going to be your moderator tonight, Jacqueline Cosgrove, and I said, you know, I think I would like to say something at the beginning. And what I want to say is that sometime, I always tell people I have the best job in town, because sometimes we get to make a difference in people's lives. And sometimes an editor can stand in the middle of the room and wave their arms and say, can somebody do a story on this? And sometimes it's crickets. But nobody really asked Jacqueline to tackle mental health and substance abuse. She knew it was something near and dear to my heart, but it was also near and dear to her heart. And that is when it's like an editor's dream come true. Because if you have a platform, I believe you should use it for good. And we've been blessed with one. And it parallels with the things that we're passionate about. So I'm so proud of Jacqueline. Let's give her a round of applause. We have quite a few of us here from the Oklahoman. We have Tiffany Gibson. She is live tweeting and blogging and doing her thing on newsok.com, as well as Dave Morris. He's streaming it live. We have Matt Dinger over here. He's writing the story for tomorrow morning's paper. We have Clyde Bunyan making a beeline toward the back. And she helped pull all this together. So thank you so much for coming. We hope we can start a conversation and keep a conversation going. Because only when you shine a light on something can you bring some clarity to it and bring attention. So if we do nothing else but raise the level of awareness, we think that's a pretty darn good thing. So, Jacqueline, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you very much for coming.
All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, so much. Thank you, Kelly, for your very kind introduction. Wow, there are so many of you here. Thank you so much for coming. We had more than 100 people RSVP. That's pretty fantastic. Also very responsible. Thank you. So tonight, you know, as a reporter, I write a lot of sad stories. I write about how our state mental health system is fragmented and how even though we rank #2 in the nation for adults with serious mental illness, we rank around 46th in the nation for funding per capita. And what I'm excited about tonight is that tonight is not about sad stories. Tonight is about recovery. Tonight is about support. Tonight is about community. Tonight is about hope. Really, tonight came from me as a reporter hearing all these great stories from people who are doing well and thriving and wanting to share those with a lot more people. And so you will hear from 6 Oklahomans who have lived experience with mental illness and or addiction. You'll also hear from someone with the Department of Health who is working hard to try to prevent suicide in the state. So I am just more than excited to hear from everybody. And I want to just a few housekeeping rules. If you have not turned off your cell phone or at least made it be quiet, let's do that. I haven't done that yet, so I'm going to do that when I sit down. Also, you're welcome to tweet if you are someone who tweets on the Twitter. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much. You're laughing at my jokes already. If you do tweet, please use the hashtag MHINOK. So MHNOK, like mental health in Oklahoma. And we also are live streaming to newsok.com, and if you want to watch this again, you can do so on newsok.com. And at the end of the night, we'll have copies of the story I wrote for this Sunday for the first story from my project, Epidemic Ignored. So if you want a copy, we have about 100. So with that, let's hear from our first speaker. I was so lucky to write a story about this woman already. Like all of our speakers, I think she's incredibly brave, talented, and smart. So let's welcome to the stage Augusta Cox.
Yeah. Hello, you guys are all so energized. That's exciting. Okay, so I'm going to tell a brief bit about my story, but there's one takeaway. And I'm going to tell you guys beforehand there's a takeaway, because when I get to it, I'm going to remind you that it's a takeaway. But we're going to start with my story. In 2008, how many people's retirement accounts crashed in 2008? I was a financial advisor in 2008. And nobody in the state of Oklahoma was happy. Because of the mortgage and the housing bubble, all of my bond clients were upset. We saw freezes on being able to take your money out of a CD, which is about as safe an investment as you know. And of course, the stocks were in the tank. So I found myself in a position of having to advise clients from all over the state to calm down. And my services became in great demand. And not only that, think about being a financial advisor. Your clients are looking to you for knowledge. So I had to do a lot of reading and making sure I could talk to my clients on top of getting to my clients, scheduling my clients, driving. So anyway, long road to a little house. I was working about 16 to 20 hours a day. And I got sick. And my boss was pretty inhumane. I started my first delusions. I thought that I had dinner with Al Pacino. So I come home to my husband. I'm like, oh, you won't believe it. I had dinner with Al Pacino. He's like, you did not have dinner with Al Pacino. Anyway, so in about 2 weeks of these kind of delusions, my job had fired me. They didn't offer me FMLA. They didn't offer me short-term disability. They just canned me. And my husband couldn't handle the fact that I was saying all of these off-the-wall things, so he left me. So in a period of about 2 weeks, my whole life kind of evaporated. But it's really interesting because, I'm going to talk about faith. And, I am open to all kinds of faith. In fact, I don't go to church. But God, the higher power, whatever it was there. And he was moving me in a different direction. So I spent the next 2 years in and out of mental hospitals, hearing voices. And the voices, by the way, just so that you guys know, voices really are in your ears, okay? They're not in the back of your head. And if you look at MRI scans of your brain or EEGs of your brain while you're hearing auditory hallucinations, the part of your brain that is controlled by hearing is actually lit up. So when I have an auditory hallucination, it's not a sound in the back of my head, it's real. I hear it in my ears. So after about 2 years of in and out of the mental hospital, auditory hallucinations, and by the way, they're both male and female, I had crazy auditory hallucinations. I had Hillary Clinton was talking to me, and Eddie Murphy was talking to me, and Tom Hanks was talking to me, and Kathy Griffin was talking to me. And my worst auditory hallucination, I had this woman, and she just screeched at me. And she made me rhyme with her. So she would screech dog, and I would have to say fog. And so the auditory hallucinations get to the point where you can't have a conversation with anybody else around you. Mental illness is really, really isolating. So it took about 2 years of me going in and out of the hospital before we finally got my medications correct. And I've now been stable on my medications for about 5 years. And what I've been through also, when you start on the medication, you just feel terrible. I spent another year, I wasn't hallucinating, but I was severely and profoundly depressed. I didn't bathe, I didn't leave the house. And it wasn't until I started doing a little bit of work that my life started moving again. So I started doing temp work, because that was really all I could handle at the time. And then I started working at the mall part-time, and I started volunteering at the National Alliance for Mental Illness, which is where I work today. Today I'm an AmeriCorps volunteer for the National Alliance for Mental Illness, and I answer crisis calls, and also I'm trained to lead support groups, and I have a support group called Working Towards Wellness for people who are struggling with mental illness and they're getting benefits, but they want to know how their benefits are going to be affected if they go out into the work world. So I deal a lot with people who are mentally ill. Now, here's my takeaway that I really want you to know about. I'm on the phone a lot with people who are mentally ill. And I get a call, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm going to say that. Everybody knows I'm not a doctor, but I've been in enough mental hospitals, and I know from my own symptoms. So I get this call, and he's rambling. This caller is just rambling and not making much sense. And every now and then, if I asked him a pointed question on the phone, I could get him to give me a sane response. But it took me about an hour of dealing with his constant rambling, and I have seen disorganized schizophrenics in the hospital. And so I recognized kind of what he was. And so I'm on the phone with him. I need to find out where you are, what's going on. You don't have your medicine. You're diabetic and you haven't eaten. You don't have diabetic supplies. So I'm on the phone with him for about an hour, and I choose to call 911 for him because not only are we having mental problems, we're also having some physical problems. So I call 911. I stay on the phone with him for another half an hour until the EMTs get there. And at that time, we had been on the phone for about an hour and a half, and so we had built a rapport. So as soon as the EMS workers got there, he handed the phone to them, and I say, here's what I think. I'm not a doctor, but I've been in enough mental hospitals here. Here's what I think is going on. So they took him, and this was in rural Oklahoma, by the way. They took him, and they took him into the hospital, and I thought, okay, so we've got him. He's safe. He's going to get what he needs. He's okay. 2 hours later, and I'm not kidding, this is a true story, he's back on the phone with me, rambling. He's back at the homeless shelter. He's had something to eat. They gave him an asthma treatment, and they gave him 0 mental health help. He wasn't physically threatening anybody, so they didn't give him any. He was just rambling. He was just rambling and rambling and rambling, but he got no mental health help, guys. And that's when Jacqueline talks about the fact that we are 48th in the nation based on mental health funding. That's where the rubber hits the road, guys. I hear it every single day. We ignore mental health problems. And I get it every single day of the week. So the last thing that I really want you guys to know about me, I have a much greater faith. I went to the big box churches before I got sick. I went to the big box churches, and I did all the things that the big box churches told me to do. And when my life crashed, I was angry at the big box churches. And to this day, I can't go back to a big box church. But I have a much better relationship with God. Today, I'm doing exactly what he wants me to do. Right now, today, I don't know what it's going to look like in my future, but today I am helping people with mental illness move forward and live successfully. And I'm so thankful to have gotten rid of church and gained spirituality. And my hopes and dreams for the future, guys, I'm in film school at OCCC. And I'm really excited about it. I want to start a 501c3 that makes movies about people with mental illness, that helps educate the public about mental illness, but also takes the profit from those movies and ultimately puts it back into the mental health community. So that's my hopes and dreams. Right now I'm working at NAMI, and I'll be here for questions afterwards.
All right, so as you can see the sign, my name is Eric Gates. I'm a peer support specialist at the Veterans Recovery Center in the VA, work downtown. What a peer support specialist is somebody with a mental health or substance abuse disorder, like Jacqueline said. Personally, I was diagnosed with PTSD and alcohol dependence, but that only is one part. As a child, I was diagnosed with ADHD. I was bullied. I had a suicide attempt at 14 years old. I have been in rehab for alcohol dependence. I've done a lot of things, a lot of dark days, and Jacqueline said we're not going to talk about dark days, but I think that helps highlight the better days. For me now, probably my greatest achievement is working with others, helping people. I have a passion for helping people and helping people with mental illness. The struggle is real. Like Augusta said, we have a disarray. We have people who are living on the streets. We have people who are actively psychotic and have no help for themselves. And I have taken it upon myself to try to give back in whatever capacity, whatever way possible. Part of what I do is I teach coping skills, not specifically the coping skills that I use, but things that might help somebody. We talk a lot about what helps you. There's 10 elements of recovery proposed by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. Part of that is self-direction, where instead of a provider saying, this is what you're going to do, this is how you do it, this is why you do it, you ask the person or the veteran, in my case, this is what you want to do, and they say, I want to do whatever. They give you the determination. They say, you know, I really want to work in a community, I really want to volunteer, I want to do this. Well, how do you do that? What are the goals and steps you take to do that? And for whatever reason, I don't know, but it just gives that person a benefit. It empowers them to make their own decisions. It empowers them to take responsibility for themselves, which is another tenet of SAMHSA's 10 elements. Augusta identified another thing as wellness, taking care of myself in areas such as financial, physical, spiritual, emotional, mental. All of these areas I need to take care of myself. And how do I do that? I set up goals. For me, my goals and kind of the successes, hopes, and dreams is working at the VA. That was always a goal. You know, as a veteran, I had realized that I had a special certain, let's say, skills that, to quote Liam Neeson, I have a certain special set of skills. But that, you know, I needed to use those to help others like myself. You know, and that for me has been probably the greatest achievement, is finally getting to that. In my bio, it says that I didn't work for a year, and I was actually, I wasn't making any money, I wasn't doing anything, and it felt horrible and depressing. And I didn't shower and I didn't bathe, but I was also taking care of a 2-year-old son. And how does that work? And you know, my struggle was real. But I've also done other things, like I volunteer at NAMI doing something like this, speaking, telling my story. You know, I work on the outside. I volunteer at the Salvation Army, at City Rescue Mission, and places to try to help others, because for some odd reason, this concept of you reap what you sow, you give what you get, it just works, and it works for me.
Good evening, everyone. How's everybody?
You got this.
I got this. I'm going to read my stuff because I'm not as prepared as everyone else, but I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Mardell King Hawkins. I am 55 years old. And has anyone heard of Mardell's bookstore, Christian bookstore? Hey. I wish it was mine, but it's not. I am the mother of 3, and they call me Nana. I have 3 beautiful, spoiled grandchildren. They call me Nana because I'm too young to be called Grandma. I've been in love with my husband for 29 years. It took him 21 years to marry me, so if anybody's out there, hang in there. I've been with NAMI since 2007. First, I'm a speaker in our own voice. I'm also a trainer. I also do NAMI Connections, and it teaches about recovery. I've enjoyed being a part of NAMI and telling my story about my life and my history of mental illness and substance abuse. I'm a recovering addict. I became a straight trainer in both In Our Own Voice and NAMI Connections. This is my story from the beginning. I'm not going to be too long, but my mother was an addict and a drug dealer. She always said, what happens in this house stays in this house. My mother ran the streets a lot. That made it easy for my stepfather to rape me. He started raping me from the age of 6 to 9. The one thing I remember is hiding under the kitchen table and him putting his whole heavy body on top of me, and I saw blood. Don't tell anybody, he said, your mama's gonna whoop you. I asked her one day, why did I have to do what he says? Because it hurts. She said, do whatever he says because your daddy don't want you. I'm the oldest of 5. I had to cook and clean and take care of my brothers and sisters. I went to school when she left me. When I was about 12, I was counting her pills, and I thought to myself, maybe I'll just take some. She had placentals and sacranols, which are reds and greens. So I took the pills, I went to sleep, and I was woken by her beating me. Instead of taking my pills, she said, I thought she was going to be upset because I took the pills and I wanted to go to heaven, but she was just beating me. The only thing I was good about that is because I didn't feel anything because I was so high until the next day, but I was black and blue, and I didn't go to school for 3 days. She would bring men over to the house, and sometimes they would stay all night, and sometimes they didn't. I always was on guard. I could hear her saying, don't leave, you can have my daughter. I slept with my clothes on and a hammer under my pillow. One night I heard a loud noise and yelling, so I went down the hallway, and I saw a man hitting her. The kids went out the back window to get help. So I went to the closet to get the shotgun. I told him, leave my mom alone. And she just yelled, shoot him, baby, shoot him. Not knowing that the gun was on safety, I pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. He grabbed the gun and hit me in the head. Blood was everywhere. At that time, the police knocked on the door. And they said he was going to shoot the police through the door. But my mama told him, don't, baby. I'll just tell him everything's okay. Just let him in. We had a fight. So she opened the door and grabbed the policeman and pushed him in. She left me lying on the floor, but the police came in and saved me. I finally had enough, and I left. I cried because I was leaving my brothers and my sisters behind. I regretted that every day. Instead of being happy, I felt afraid and scared all the time. I covered my windows in the house, and I felt sad. I even thought about killing myself again. I didn't know why I felt that way, and I found a group at the Red Rock Mental Health Services called Adults Who Were Sexually Abused as Children. I didn't know that still haunted me. I began to lose weight. My hair fell out. I was sad all the time. I talked to a therapist about my mother and what had happened to me, and I told him I'm going to hell because I hate her. And I asked him, why do people run over me? Why do people take advantage of me? Why do people just do me wrong? And he said, you can love her, but you don't have to like her. Or her ways, or people do what they do to you because you let them. I let them? Wow, that was life-changing. So I got diagnosed with severe depression disorder, severe anxiety disorder, panic attacks, and PTSD. I thought that was why I was acting and feeling the way I was. I was so relieved to be diagnosed. It had a name. I could call it something now instead of calling myself crazy. I went to a lot of therapists. I had counseling. I saw a psychiatrist, and I also have a sponsor because I'm in recovery. If I don't stay in recovery, then I can't have anything. Is my time up? Oh, okay. This is where this was good for a while. Sometimes, it was good for a while. Then my husband went to prison. He wasn't my husband at the time. I felt lost and alone again. I started using. My son was born cocaine addicted, and they took my kids away. Nothing in my whole world hurt me worse than that. I had to go back to treatment. I went to treatment, and then I went to Red Rock housing. I met a man, and he talked to me about everything. He told me that I could tell my story and say something, that I could tell my story and help other people who suffer from mental illness. It was NAMI. NAMI gave me self-worth. It helped me to be a better person than I was. NAMI gave me hope, and that I could make a difference in my life and show that this debilitating, crippling disorder was not the end of the world. I was broken, damaged, and lost, and I felt helpless. This order does not define me. NAMI gave me strength, courage, and pride that I never existed before. They helped me to believe in myself so that I could encourage and inspire and spread the hope. NAMI gave me something to live for. I can now let go of the past and live for the present, embrace the future. I cannot tell you all the things that NAMI has done for me because they're still doing things. I still am growing, and I'm learning who and what I am capable of. NAMI has truly saved my life and the lives of my family members. Thank you.
Sorry, really quick before our next speaker. In case anyone hears something tonight and they need to talk to somebody, we have some wonderful folks from Heartline in the back. So if you are feeling something, you need to talk to somebody at any point, just head to the back. We got some nice people back there. Also, there are cue cards, and you're welcome to ask questions. If you have a question for a specific person, put their name on it. If you have just a general question, then we'll make it work. So that's just real quick before our next speaker, who happens to be Tim.
I'm honored to be on this stage with the heroic voices that we've just heard. In fact, I'm kind of sobered right now after listening to Mardell. Tim Reside is my name, and I'm an ordained minister. I'm probably the oldest guy up here tonight. I'm 65 years old. I have been living with bipolar disorder for 36 years. I have a bipolar 1 with psychotic features diagnosis. I've had more than a few episodes with psychosis, so I relate to my schizophrenic friends, and we sit and kind of share similar stories sometimes. I'm the president of a group in Tulsa called Bright Tomorrows. 15 years ago, I stepped out of my church work because I was concerned about the realization that there were people in need as I had been in need, and we wanted to be there for people. So we facilitate support groups, do educational work that bring ministers together with their clinical counterparts to talk about the issues in their church, and we go out and tell our story and that type of thing. It began for me when I was 29 years of age. I was in the middle of the vocational choice that I had made for myself to be a minister. My wife, who's here tonight, of 45 years, at that time we'd been married 7. We had 2 little ones. For 4 years, we had been parents. I had been in the ministry now for about that same amount of time. But I was in the middle of an existential type of crisis. Some real spiritual questions had come up in me, doubts about some things, and I was also concerned that I was not effectively providing for my family. I began to experience depression and despair, but I had been trained to kick it into high gear at such moments as that. So I determined that by hook or by crook, I was going to come out of that and set all brand new goals and surmount every challenge and be a winner. And I began to feel better than I had ever felt before. In fact, I was pretty much nonstop in a euphoric state. My mind just was more creative than it had ever been before. I slept less, felt better for it. I was just up. I was just intense. I was just driven. I was just... And then somewhere like the proverbial frog that's in the boiling pot and doesn't know what's going on, I slid over into what they call psychosis. Now that's in retrospect. I didn't know that was going on at the time. All I knew was that suddenly Christ had returned. Excuse me, you maybe didn't know, but he wears a red shirt. And it was so convincing. It was so convincing that I knew I had to head to Washington, D.C. to help the president out. And I did. I got on the plane, and I headed there, and I was outside the White House, knowing that everything had been prepared for me, and that President Jimmy Carter was looking forward to the visit. The comical part to the story is it was Easter time. The president was out of town, and the Easter bunny was there rolling eggs with the children on the front lawn of the White House, actually the backyard of the White House. I was brought back to Tulsa within a couple of days, ended up in the psychiatric unit. I was in a schizophrenic episode state. I was put on Haldol and Thorazine. That was 1979. I was a major mess, and they crashed me from up there to way down here. The next 2 or 3 years were hell on earth for me. Eventually, I leveled out, went off medication, because we did not understand that I was dealing with a persistent challenge, a chronic challenge. It would surface again in 1988 and leave me today with a rapid cycling type of bipolar disorder, which means I have to work at this on a daily basis. I have had to learn how to deal with humiliations, shame, how to shake that off, how to distinguish between false guilt and real guilt. There's a lot of internal stuff like that that goes on in our lives. But I've also learned how to transform these negatives into positive opportunities. Is that my halfway? That's my 4. And I want to say thank you because she says I'm done.
My name is Jessica Ryder, and I suffer from chemical dependency as well as mental illness. I have struggled with addiction for over 12 years. I was diagnosed in July of 2015 with bipolar 1 severe mood disorder with rapid cycling. During the last year of my addiction, I can remember telling people that the only way I could get off of drugs was if I had something else to stabilize my mood swings until I was past the withdrawal state. And while I said that in all seriousness, I never realized how true of a statement it was. When I came into the Remerge program June 29th of 2015, I knew that it was the start to a new life for me and that it wouldn't be easy, but it would be worth it. I was wanting to get sober for many years, but it was always too difficult for me on my own, and now I know why. Once I came into the Remerge program and I was diagnosed as bipolar, I didn't want to believe it. I remember insisting that I didn't need to be on medication. Part of me thought it was that because I was past the withdrawal stage that I was fine. The other reason I was so determined that I didn't suffer from mental illness was because I had this image in my head of what people with mental illness should look like. Just how people have the same mental image of what people with addiction should look like. And I knew that I did not fit that stereotype. I knew that I had seriously fluctuating emotions, but isn't that normal when you're coming off of drugs? Especially when you've been doing them for numerous years? Well, after talking to several people about my feelings and my concerns about being bipolar, the staff at Remerge convinced me to just give the medication a try for 45 days, and after that 45 days, if I still felt as though it was unnecessary, then we would reevaluate my diagnosis. Humoring them wound up being one of the best choices I made in 2015. During that 45 days, I started to feel better than I had in years. Not only had I been clean for 5 months, so I was getting some clarity back in my life, but now my moods and emotions were stabilizing as well. The self-awareness that I had gained was incredible. I was able to notice when I was exhibiting symptoms of manic spells. Still, there was a part of me that continued to say, that wasn't being manic, you were just excited about something. Or, you weren't depressed, you were just tired and sad. Those are normal feelings. You don't need medication for normal feelings. Now, to most people, that sounds like denial. But today, I know that that was my addiction speaking to me. My addiction spoke to me and told me that it wasn't because of the medication that I was feeling better. It was because I had gotten off drugs, and I'd been off it long enough that my roller coaster of emotions was finally leveling out. A voice in the back of my head telling me to not believe what was being shown to me. My addiction knew that if I were to stop taking that medication, I would soon be back on that roller coaster of emotions, which would be so intense that I would just want them to stop. And I'm sure we all know how addicts stop feelings. Thankfully, I continued to take the medication for several months, but that part of me still held on, saying that the medication wasn't what was making me feel better. Then I was finally able to see the reality of it when some of my old patterns of thinking and behavior resulted in me being off my medication for 20 days. The first 5 or 6 weren't so bad. After that, everything started to go downhill. By day 11, I was fully accepting of the fact that I was bipolar. My mood swings were so intense that I felt like I was losing my mind. I would go from so excited and happy on top of the world like nothing could harm me, and then out of nowhere, I would hate myself, my life. I was a failure, I didn't want to get out of bed, and I was mad at the world. Sometimes in the same day. There was never any real reason for the change, it just happened. My mental illness and my addiction go hand in hand. They work together like a team. My addiction caused my mental illness to increase in severity, which in turn made me not want to feel like my emotions were out of control. I look at it like I was trying to cure my sickness with an allergy. My hopes are that today's society can begin to understand more of what people like myself go through. The repetitive cycle that is so hard to break free from. I would like to express my eternal gratitude to North Care and to Women's Remerge because they gave me the tools and the assistance I needed to break free from the chains that held me prisoner.
Now, those are all tough acts to follow, but I'll try. I'm 54 years old, and I retired from a 26-year Coast Guard career. I was in the military for 26 years. I came in the Coast Guard with PTSD, didn't know it, it just exasperated it. I grew up in a very violent home. I was physically, sexually, and mentally abused as a child. So I ran to the only thing I knew, and that was the Coast Guard, because that was another dysfunctional family. So I went from one to another. Thank God I didn't get married. I didn't wind up with a third one. I'm single, not telling any of the guys out there that I'm single. I'm just letting you all know. I'm not soliciting, because that's illegal here. And there is a cop back there, so we don't want to. So anyway, on with my illness. I've been diagnosed with terminal comedian, oh no, not that one. I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, rapid cycling. So I'd be happy now, and 2 minutes from now you could see me, crying. With PTSD, military sexual trauma is on top of the PTSD I got when I was a kid. And then also I'm a recovering alcoholic. What I try to do is I try to stay in recovery and try to stay happy. And I like telling jokes, and I like trying to make other people laugh because I don't want to go back to the depressive, because my depression lasted from, I guess, age 11 till about 10 years ago. And it wasn't like if I wanted to commit suicide, it was when I was going to commit suicide. I just didn't want to live. I didn't think I was worthy because of everything I've been through. I didn't think I had any value whatsoever. I am happy to report to you today that I do feel I'm valuable. I'm on the NAMI board now. I'm also a trained interim voice speaker. I'm a golfer, but the only hole-in-one I ever got were the ones in my shoes. I'm still working for that one. And I just try to, and I still practice recovery with a 12-step program. And I stay close to people in that program as well as with NAMI and my psychiatrists. I see my psychiatrist monthly. I was one of those bipolars that was able to get off medication. I still take some stuff for sleep, and I have a lot of things I do for coping. But she took me off the medication, that's why I stay with her, and I'm in therapy weekly. I'm in a support group that I go to weekly. And that's what I do for my recovery. And I'm just grateful, but if I have to get back on medication, that is something, I did it for about 12 years. I am willing to go back on it, but my doctor wanted to try and see how I was doing. And I also try to help my fellow veterans and know that suicide is not the option. I had 14 attempts, and I'm just grateful today that I didn't succeed. And I'm grateful to be over here to be able to share with you tonight.
David Treat. I wish that I was a lot, because he's great. Man, it's really good to be here tonight. I can't even pretend that I'll be able to read those lovely notes that I wrote for you. My name is Savannah Kalman. I'm the Prevention Program Manager for Suicide Prevention at the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services over at 13th and Lottie. I'm about 6 months shy of having a decade's worth of different levels of direct service with people, and I have a full lifetime of living with friends and family who have lived experience in mental illness and substance abuse, and I'm completely bowled over and just humbled by everybody who's been willing to come up and give their stories today, so let's give them just another, yeah. I'm kind of your cleanup batter here, so I also just want to say really quickly, again, a big thank you. How lucky are we that a big, huge organization such as the Oklahoman takes a risk and supports a reporter to do nothing but this type of investigative, illuminating reporting on mental health in Oklahoma. So thank you to Kelly Dyer-Fry and to Jacqueline again. Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to give you a few facts that I'm sure some of you are already very familiar with, and then these are all global facts, and I want to start off just very quickly by saying that these numbers that I stand up and repeat in trainings, it is never lost on me that these represent individuals, right? So sometimes when you hear a lot of data and facts, you kind of wonder, man, does that person know that, like, that's my aunt, or that's my cousin, or so on and so forth, that's me? I feel that a lot in these numbers, but I want to share with you globally some of the things that are going on in our state. So in the state of Oklahoma, the CDC classifies youth as 10 to 24-year-olds. Talk to them if you feel like youth is something different. So youth is 10 to 24. For 10 to 24-year-olds, suicide is the second leading cause of death in the state of Oklahoma. It's number 2. Across that entire age range. So for working age adults, the CDC classifies working age adults as 25 to 64-year-olds. Again, talk to the CDC if you worked before the age of 24 or after the age of 64. But for working age adults, 25 to 64, the national rate of death by suicide per 100,000 persons in the nation is 12.7. For 25 to 64-year-olds, the rate of death by suicide per 100,000 in the state of Oklahoma is 24.9. We're double the national average, and our working age adults are really struggling. For many years, we've had youth-appropriated suicide prevention, specifically being there for the needs of our middle and high school students in particular, because of the information we receive from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that says somewhere between 12 and 15 ninth and 8th graders, 8th grade and juniors in high school are having active thoughts of suicide within a calendar school year. So those numbers are high, and we know that our youth need attention, we know that they need services, but now we're really starting to understand that people across the age range in Oklahoma are really struggling. The problems that are facing these individuals who go on to take their lives are largely mental health concerns that are not addressed and intimate partner problems. When you select for the age group that is a little bit older, chronic pain and disease starts to become a primary presenting problem. And when you go to the younger ages, it is more and more often intimate partner problems, which you can imagine that is another kind of CDC term that covers a multitude of things, right? That could be anything from an abusive family situation to a person who you've been in a relationship with that has been broken. So why come at the end and just really wrap things up with a bunch of like very, very hopeless statistics? It's because the last thing I want to give you with is that over the last 2 years, as we've seen an increase in suicide prevention funding, both from winning 1 in 4 awards that are available in the entire nation, Oklahoma has one of them, This agency is a machine that is very lean, full of very smart people, and we are one of 4 in the nation that receives funding for those 25 to 64-year-olds. We won that grant this year, 1 in 4. And then our youth funding continues, and we're out there in the community. But, you know, like, you don't have my job, so what are you supposed to do, right? Like, you don't want to listen to me describe to you what I do all day. What can you do? What you can do is you can do something for me right now. It's going to make you really uncomfortable, but I need you to spend 10 seconds and look at your neighbor and say, are you thinking of killing yourself? And then I want you to have them be able to say it to you. This is going to be uncomfortable, but we're all here having coffee. Maybe somebody back there has had some extra coffee. So go ahead and give me 30 seconds. Ask your neighbor. All right, this is going to be just like whatever your version of church is. So I also want you to go ahead and take a moment right now in this moment of maybe discomfort or maybe comfort if you're a clinician or someone with lived experience. But I want you to now turn to that person and say, I care about you. You could call me if you were ever struggling. So go ahead and say, I care about you. You could call me if you were struggling. And I hope you mean it. This is where I slowly just walk off the stage and you forget that I'm up here. Okay, thank you guys very much. So there are a lot of metaphors for what we just did, and sometimes when I give up and give trainings, I can kind of see people feel like, no, that can't possibly be enough. But what you just did really is enough. Letting somebody know that you care enough that if they were ever struggling with thoughts of hopelessness, feelings of worthlessness, feeling like they were a burden, whether or not you are having those same thoughts about their situation, I may think that what Jacqueline's going through is not that bad, but if she's telling me and giving me the signs that she's really struggling, I need to be there to listen to her, and I need to be able to let her know, not just when she's in crisis, but I need to let her know tonight, Jacqueline, I really care about you, care about the work that you're doing, and if you ever needed to, I want you to call me. And if I wasn't around, I want you to be able to call my partners back there at Heartline because they're available 24 hours, 7 days a week. If you need to talk to somebody consistently, I want you to get hooked up with NAMI. I want you to get hooked up with one of our CMHCs. I want you to find one of the peers that are in this room that are beautiful, amazing people. I want you to continue to tell your friends and family members that no one up here tonight had spots or 3 arms. These are your friends, these are your family members. I have a spot right now, actually, but like, not like big purple spots. These are your friends, these are your family members. And mental illness does not deserve the weird stigma that we attach to it. We do not talk about this the way that we do about medical disorders. When I have a neighbor or friend who has the flu, I provide them maybe with some soup and call them, make sure they're okay. We need to do the same thing when one of our peers who was just up here is having an episode, right? So when you are able to tell someone when they're not in crisis, I care about you, I want you to reach out, I want you to let me know if you ever are struggling, and then when you see it, having the very, very brave conversation and saying, are you thinking of killing yourself? And then being able to provide them to those resources, that's going to be met with relief from that person. And if it turns out that's not what they're struggling with, they're going to be able to answer you honestly and say, no, that's not what I'm going through, you know? But they're going to know that you cared a lot. I know this felt weird to maybe go through the motions tonight, but hopefully some of you sensed that person was willing to feel a little awkward to make sure that I knew that they cared about me. And those brave conversations are going to be able to transform our state. Until I have more money, until I have more staff, until I have more resources given to me in all directions, I'm not going to be able to do this by myself. So I really need you to be able to have those brave conversations. The only other brave conversation I would ask you to have is to please email or call your legislator, right? Please, yeah, let's go ahead. Please share with them tonight's stories of recovery. Recovery works. These people are lovely, and they are living in recovery. They are just a few of many, many Oklahomans who are putting money back into our state, who are giving of themselves to other people who are still currently struggling, and who are assisting the department when we fall short because we have so many limitations put on us, are out there really just providing a community response and helping Oklahoma be a place worth living in and giving some of those reasons for living back to one another. So please call them and share with them the stories that you've heard tonight, and hold them accountable for what are we doing here that we're not being able to fund mental health in the ways that are really going to provide recovery. So have some brave conversations. Thank you so much. I'm here to just say that we work for you. We work for you. We work for these individuals. I come every day thinking about your hearts and your minds, and trying to get you the help that you deserve when it's your friend, when it's your family member, when it's you. So if you ever needed to know anything more about what the department's doing, we're able to connect you with our communications director, or I'm going to be around for a little while afterwards. But we work for you, and we really care about everyone who's here tonight, and everyone in the state. So thank you so much, Jacqueline.
All right. Wow, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Savannah. Thank you to all of our speakers. If you have a question that you've written on your cue card, hold it up so that our staff can start collecting those, whether that be Clyde or Kristen. I know they're somewhere in this room. I see them. They'll be coming by. Wave it. Also, Kelly's picking up questions. And then if our speakers could come back to the stage so we can answer those questions. Also, so I'll feel less alone up here with people staring at me.
Thank you so much.
All right, questions? Okay. This is a great first question. We probably don't have time for everyone to answer, but like just take turns, and you guys know each other, so we're cool. So the first question is, what do you do if you live with someone who will not seek help? Who wants to take that one? Up to the mic.
Not everybody wants.
It's kind of hard because until a person desires themselves to want to, you can make them. The probation officer can make them, the policeman can make them, but until they're ready, there's really nothing you can do.
It is absolutely impossible to argue with mental illness. You will beat your head against a wall until your brain is a bloody pulp. Okay? So what do I suggest? Number one, you need to protect yourself. Go to a support group for families so that you can talk to other family members who are exactly where you are. And number two, strict and clear consequences. If you are mentally ill and you are smoking marijuana in my house, I don't approve of that, and I'm going to send you to X number, the Jesus house. But the number one thing that I want you to hear from me is you cannot argue with crazy, and please do what you need to do to protect yourself.
This question is for Jessica. Why did you get off the medication when it was apparent it was helping? We hear that so often about individuals with who have a mental health disorder. Like, so what was the driving factor that helped you make that decision? Since we heard such a range of opinions tonight.
Well, honestly, whenever I had that 20 days off of my medication, it was, as I had stated, it was kind of due to some of my old patterns in behavior and thinking. To be perfectly blunt with it, I got a sanction in my program and I had to go to jail for 10 days. And when I got out, I missed my appointment to go and get my refill. So that was, as soon as I could get back in, I got back on them. So I didn't really go off of it by choice, unless you say like my prior choices caused it. So.
May I make a comment on that?
Sure,
the data shows that bipolars in particular, as well as people with schizophrenia, are very prone to this. Now, in the case of bipolar, it's an episodic type of an illness. It tends to come back on you in cycles. And that varies from bipolar to bipolar. But for some bipolars, they can really get some reprieve periods, and they're really feeling good. So it just doesn't make sense in your mind to take meds when you feel good.
Okay, this is for everybody, so just jump in. What would you want from the state of Oklahoma to help better meet the needs of Oklahomans living with mental illness and substance abuse disorders?
I think if you read Jacqueline's article, one of the big things that I get out of that is that we need community mental health treatment centers that don't just treat the chronically ill, that treat people before they get into an episode, before they become psychotic. Augusta made a point of treating somebody who was actively psychotic for their physical ailment, but not their mental ailment. The brain is a physical part of our body. It is a realistic part of our body, and it's something that we need to take care of. I have a severe disdain for treating the brain differently. A lot of times when we have mental illnesses, we refer to ourselves as schizophrenic. I am schizophrenic. I am bipolar, instead of, I'm a person with. It's been said on the stage before. We don't call ourselves lupus. We don't call ourselves a cancer. We don't call ourselves a tumor. We own it for whatever reason, because of stigma based on community involvement, based on personal involvement. We own it. We shouldn't own it because it's a part of us, just like my hair color is a part of us. So it's a part of us, not the entirety of us, and we need to treat it as a piece of the person, not the entirety of the person.
The only thing I would add to that is that we need to stop treating the mentally ill as criminals. We need to treat them as sick people. You'd never take a diabetic to jail now, would you?
This question is similar to one that we already had, but in case any other thoughts came up. When a person is in crisis and rejects family, how does one break through the wall?
The best thing that I could recommend is just, with the exercise we had done just a moment ago, just go ahead and make sure that they know that you're there for them. And you can basically tell them, look, I see that you're going through something. I don't know if you want to talk to me about it or not, but just know that I'm here for you, and just make sure that they know that, and continue to tell them that until they get tired of hearing you tell them that, and then they'll finally probably go ahead and tell you. That's from my experience.
I know I'm answering a lot of these questions. I'm going to be a mic hog. So mental illness is extremely isolating, and it's very emotionally painful. So if you're dealing with somebody who's in that crisis stage, I would say you must be experiencing some serious internal conflict and some pain. Do you want to talk about it? And see where that goes. Because from my experience, being sick is very painful. So that's what I got to say.
Yeah, I would just add to this that, if you're a friend or family member and you're concerned about someone, I would say, I'm going to plug our partners again, Mental Health Association, NAMI, and Heartline. They're all have a variety of different things that you can call the hotline and say, I'm very, very concerned about my loved one. I have no idea what to do. And they will help talk. You don't have to be the person in crisis. They will help coach you and give you some advice and encouragement for yourself. We've also heard a lot about self-care before caring for others. So that's true if you are a friend or family member of someone who's in crisis. You have to be able to take care of yourself. And so joining a NAMI support group or joining in with some of the Mental Health Association groups that can help give you some guidance about what you're actively going through would be helpful.
And I'll just add to that if you can't remember the suicide prevention lifeline, you can just call 211, right? Yeah, anywhere you are. So in Oklahoma. Any other questions? Oh, yes, excellent. Oh, one right there. These are all pretty long questions, so I'm just gonna ask a question myself and read through them. You guys have mentioned self-care. For people who are not familiar with that term, what are some things that can mean doing in your life?
Eating well, healthy food, exercise, taking out time when you're in crisis and you don't even sleep well. People need to get a good night's sleep. Talk to your family members or friends, but take care of yourself and make sure that you're exercising. I mean, even if it's just taking for a walk or loving your pets. We love animals. We love on something that can love us back, and it's unconditional.
The only thing I'd like to add to that is, since I have PTSD, I have to watch what I watch on TV. I have to watch what I'm exposed to. I can't traumatize myself by watching stuff that's traumatic.
Yeah, pretty much in line with that. I've had to discover what triggers things with me. A part of my experience with bipolar is a low threshold for irritability, agitation. Things can really set me off. Kerosene to my match lit becomes a fire that not only burns my house down, but yours and the entire neighborhood. So in terms of self-monitoring, to the end that I might better self-manage and learn how to self-stabilize is important daily work. So I wake up myself in the morning and say, Tim, today, pay attention. There are going to be activating events today. A lot of them are going to catch you by surprise. Begin to take note on those that are typical triggers for you and begin to reach into your coping skill bag and begin to apply some of that. Doesn't mean I do my day perfectly, but I do it more mindfully.
Okay, I'm going to address one question myself. I don't know the exact answer, but I have a little bit from my reporting. Someone asked, how are we going to expand Medicaid? For those of you who are not aware, Medicaid expansion is part of the Affordable Care Act. It's a key element. It basically takes this gap that we have in the state and expands Medicaid to where more low-income people, especially adults, can qualify for Medicaid. We have not made that choice in the state of Oklahoma. Some other states have. And so I was talking to Governor Fallon the other day, and I asked her this question, and she brought up that the state is considering using a waiver program. They're just looking at the options right now, because I asked her about sort of how are you going to address these low-income Oklahomans with mental illnesses and substance use disorders who need care, and the state agency is so overwhelmed. And she talked about this waiver program that they're considering. So that is a potential option. Other than that, we'll see what happens in the legislature. Another person asked, I've noticed some doctors are quick to give up medications without taking the time to correctly diagnose. It took 8 years for my brother to get his medications right. What do you say to someone who is weary of doctors who are pill happy and are weary of the years it may take to get medication right?
I experienced that. First of all, they gave me the diagnosis of major depression, and they treated me for that. And in treating me for that, they gave me the wrong medication, which almost, and I'm not going to use the name because I don't want to get anybody trigger happy and saying that medication doesn't work. It does work if it's diagnosed to the right person. But then I got very suicidal on that medication. So I just kept at it. And I kept going to different doctors until I found one that finally helped diagnose me correctly, because she watched me and observed me more than the other doctors did. And so just be patient. Be patient, and if you don't, it's like a potato chip. If you can't find the one you like, go to the next brand. Just keep and talk to people who have mental illness and see who their doctor is and see who they're happy with. Dr. Lee at Professional Corp Integris Baptist.
And I'm living successfully with schizophrenia. Antipsychotic medication makes you feel like poo-poo. Okay, I have much better words than poo-poo, but that's the one we're gonna use for now. Every antipsychotic medication I have ever been on, and I've been on several, they all make you feel like poo-poo. So what I would tell to somebody is keep a conversation with your doctor. I was on one antipsychotic medication that felt like I had run a marathon every day. My leg muscles were hurt. I had a constant backache, and I just went to the doctor and said, I'm not taking this anymore. We're going to change it. So what I would say about medication is advocate as much as you can for yourself. And if you are a caregiver, talk to that person. Ask them, how are you feeling? Are you lethargic? I see that you've been in bed a lot. Are you fatigued? Are you having any pain? But the biggest thing, psychiatrists are odd ducks. They want you in and out. And they will talk to you, but you got to talk to them first. So if you are a caregiver, ask, how are you feeling? Are you in pain? If you are the person on the medication, do not in any way, shape, or form feel that you can't tell the doctor, I'm not taking this. So that's my 2 cents.
Pharmaceutical companies are making a lot of money. Medications are different for each person. Each person's chemistry is different. There are side effects. And sometimes if you have a side effect, you say, this medicine, I don't want to take it. Mine took 3 years for my right combination. I started at a low dosage because if you take a medicine that makes you a zombie or that makes you incapacitated, you don't want to take it anymore. But the medications does work. They do work. Talk to your doctor about side effects and how you feel, like she said. What's going on with you. And nobody knows you better than you know yourself. So when you feel, you'll feel strange, you might feel different, but you'll be able to tell someone different that I have a backache or my mouth is dry or whatever the symptoms might be, but do talk to someone about your side effects.
2 more questions, and we'll probably wrap everything up. This might be a good question for Savannah and some of the folks who've done nonprofit work. What can we do? How can we help a family member who wants help for a mental illness and addiction but has no job, money, or insurance? Single male, 34 years old.
Thanks, person. No, this is the question, and it's really no trouble for us to answer this at all. We want to see you, and we want to help you. If you come to any one of our 14 community-based mental health centers, we will find a way. I work with some of the people who are just the best and the brightest, and every year our CMHCs are giving out as much care as they humanly possibly can. So keep calling until you can find assistance, and I'm like desperate for Mr. Tate to just come up here and answer this question instead. Yeah, you'll see him, right? Yeah, just go see Randy. He'll take care of you. No, but we're nervously laughing, but this is a real thing that I want you to know. If you need care, that's all we need to know. We will work with you and find a way. If it's not the first place that you walk in, we desperately really try to make sure that there are no wrong doors. I will say that I've even had personal family members that have had iffy experiences, maybe on their first try to get in somewhere. But if you stick with it, there are people at every location, at every place that really do want to get you the right care and the right treatment. So come in, don't let ability to pay ever stop you from seeking help. And that's how I would answer that.
I work at a mental health facility, and the Department of Mental Health pays for a lot. I work for the indigent. A lot of people that come in don't have jobs, don't have money, don't have income, and we provide for them. But I don't want to say their names because I don't want them mad at me. So talk to me later.
And I'll just add real quick, I know Mental Health Association of Oklahoma has a program called Sunbridge, I think. Gail, yell if I'm wrong. And that is some counselors who've signed up to do pro bono work. They're in the back of the room, and you're welcome to go talk to them after this. Our last question will be, what are some encouraging words for someone currently fighting addiction who doesn't feel like there's hope? Thank you. Love, a grateful audience member.
There is hope. I started drinking when I was 7 years old, and I got sober when I was 18. I went to my first meeting when I was 18, or sought help when I was, I don't want to break any traditions here because we are on press, radio, and films. So went to a recovery place, and for the first time when I was 18, and then I stuck with it. So there is hope, and I suffered with mental illness after I was sober. I got sober and suffered with white-knuckling my mental illness because I was told by some loving friends that medication would not be something I needed to seek out because I was an addictive personality disorder. And so for 17 years of recovery, I did not seek mental health help. So there is hope. I survived it. Just get help. Get to the closest place you can. If you're a veteran, go to the VA, go to Vet Center. If you're in society, if you don't have insurance, go to one of these community-based help. Get help, there is hope. I'm still here.
I just kind of wanted to add what she was saying. Just there is never a point to which you can't come back from. I know that I personally, in my addiction, I mean, I was on drugs for well over 12 years. That's almost half my lifetime. And no matter how far down I got, no matter how hopeless I was, I can see now that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and that it is worth it. So just keep on trying and just talk to people, find help. You can go online and you can look up where there's different types of meetings. If you don't like 12 steps, they have other types. I mean, just keep looking and keep trying because there is help and it is worth it.
Mental illness, like I've said before, is very isolating. So what I would say is, I've experienced the depths of pain. My husband left, my job left, my credit went to you-know-what, and I was a financial advisor, so you know how important my credit was to me. But I've experienced the depth of pain, and today I'm happy. And because I'm happy today, I appreciate where I've come from. So today, what I would say is, I want to experience all that life has for me. The pain, the joy, everything. So I want to encourage you to go ahead and get help now, but it's all a part of why we're here. Good and bad. You learn and get better every day. And if NAMI can be of assistance, I answer every single phone call that comes in. So please call us.
Yeah, I'll just take off my reporter hat for a second and put on my person one and say to whoever this card is, would you guys talk to the person who's wrote this card? See, they're all these nice people. Don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed. All these people will talk to you. Not at the same time because that would be intense. But feel free to grab them. The people in the back want to help. There's lots of people in this room who want to help you, whoever wrote this card, because like they said, there is hope. You guys have been doing kind of a golf clap tonight. Let's give a real, true round of applause with some whooping to these people. Oh, yes. Fantastic. Well, thank you, Augusta. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Nadine. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Mardell. And thank you, Savannah. You guys, there's tables in the back with nonprofits. Please support District House. They were so kind to give us this space. Buy some coffee, decaf if you're going to bed soon. Buy some snacks. The cookies are good. I had one before.
The Reuben is good.
The Reuben is good. It's been approved. So please support District House. And if you have any questions, let us know. And like I said, our partner organizations are in the back. And we just appreciate it. Oh, and also, if you want a copy of the story I wrote, we have several, and we'll be passing those out as you leave. So thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you.